Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. A shooting at an ICE field office in Dallas kills 2 and injures 1 more. Authorities say this is an act of targeted violence against ICE. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy addresses the United Nations, what he says about Russia's occupation of the Crimean Peninsula. The Secret Service is probing the escalator at the United Nations that stopped abruptly for President Trump. Could there be foul play? President Trump and Australian Prime Minister Albanese will meet next month at the White House, their first summit since Trump's re-election. Oklahoma has struck a deal to get Turning Point USA chapters in high schools across the state. Plus, the organization founded by Charlie Kirk resumes its tour of college campuses.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. 2 people were killed and 1 more is in critical condition from a shooting at an ICE office in Dallas. Officials also say the suspect died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Today at approximately 6:40 a.m., we received a assist the officer call. We responded to the call, got to the scene, and we later learned that we had 4 individuals that were shot, 2 of them deceased, including the shooter.
This is the 3rd shooting in Texas directed at ICE or CBP. This must stop. To every politician who is using rhetoric demonizing ICE and demonizing CBP, stop. To every politician demanding that ICE agents be doxxed and calling for people to go after their families, stop. This has very real consequences.
Authorities said a person fired indiscriminately from the roof of a nearby building at the ICE office and at a van in the secure entryway. All 3 people shot were detainees at the facility. No ICE agents were hurt. Authorities have not released the identities of the victims and the shooter.
I can confirm at this time that the FBI is investigating this incident as an act of targeted violence. It is unfortunately just the most recent example we've seen of targeted violence. To include here in North Texas, what I can also share with you is that early evidence that we've seen from rounds that were found near the suspected shooter contain messages that are anti-ICE in nature.
The same field office had also received a bomb threat last month. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said on X, quote, "This vile attack was motivated by hatred for ICE." And, quote, "We know that our ICE law enforcement is facing unprecedented violence against them. It must stop." Authorities stress that this is an active investigation. We'll keep you updated with the latest information throughout the day. We're taking a closer look at the deadly shooting at an ICE facility in Dallas this morning. Joining us now is retired Lieutenant Colonel Darren Gobb, National Security Analyst and former battalion commander for the U.S. Army. So, Darren, good to see you. Good afternoon. So the FBI said it's investigating the shooting as an act of targeted violence. What does that mean in practice for the investigation?
Yeah, good afternoon, Don. Yeah, ultimately what it means is that this is a politically motivated violence against a specific target that has been the target of a lot of violent rhetoric from far too many faces and voices across this country. And this is the result. We're lucky no law enforcement officers in ICE or anywhere else were actually casualties in this event. I don't know beyond the shooter who else the other casualties were yet. Either way, it's a terrible thing to see, but it's an unfortunate reality today that those who are advocating such violence across this nation against people who are just trying to enforce our laws and do the job that they were hired to do has become so violent and weaponized apparently so many people to actually take matters into their own hands and commit such heinous acts. This is the result.
Okay, to your point, Darren, how strong is the correlation of you mentioning an increased anti-ICE rhetoric versus an increase in violence against ICE? How strong is that correlation?
I think it's a very strong correlation. Clearly, we need to stand by for proof to say this is truly what motivated people and whether or not they actually acted on their own. Also, I do not believe these things always to be lone wolf actors. Sometimes they're just the ones who are the trigger pullers, and they have a smaller team behind them to help. In this case, understand and recon the site and know what their patterns are, so they know when to be there. That is a distinct possibility, and I think we're lucky so far that we haven't seen more of this across the nation, because it's not only the social media universe where people are calling out and asking for violence against ICE and other agencies. We've got governors like Newsom in California who are trying to make laws like no masking in California by ICE agents, which they can't do anyways. They can't make that law and enforce it. But there's a lot of rhetoric from a lot of different people in many different levels of government that are making this worse now. And I fear an acceleration and an increase in frequency.
So what do you think are the knock-on effects of this latest attack? I mean, I'm just thinking here, could this incident change security measures at immigration facilities?
I think they're going to have to take a look at that pretty hard, especially in places like Texas. Those areas that are closest to the southern border where probably the greatest threat exists, as well as in California. They're going to have to look at, what patterns have they established that are clear patterns that other people can exploit because they do the same thing at the same time all the time. They'll look at that. They'll look at are the agents properly uniformed, wearing the right thing? Are they? All of it needs to get looked at and make sure there aren't security vulnerabilities, not only in this location, but in other locations where this could also happen. And I expect they're going to start doing that, if not already, extremely soon.
So, Colonel Gobb, to your point of rhetoric earlier, I have a clip here with me that I'd like you to have a listen to. So at a press conference this morning, there were multiple calls from officials to bring an end to violence, including from Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Let's take a listen to it.
This needs to stop. Violence is wrong. Politically motivated violence is wrong. It was 2 weeks ago today that we saw a political assassination in Utah that tore the heart out of much of this country. This is the third shooting in Texas directed at ICE or CBP. This must stop. To every politician who is using rhetoric demonizing ICE and demonizing CBP, stop. To every politician demanding that ICE agents be doxxed and calling for people to go after their families, stop. This has very real consequences.
So, Colonel Gobb, as we're speaking now, it appears that the sniper has been identified as a 29-year-old. His name is Joshua Yan. So, having listened to what Senator Ted Cruz has said, do you think this shooting fits into the greater landscape as well of, rhetoric or political violence in our country?
I believe it does ultimately, because when you look at this shooter's background, just looking at the shooter, not trying to figure out what the network of support may be behind him, the social media posts, the different kinds of graphics and various things that you saw on his social media specifically make it very clear that this is a very left politically oriented person, which is consistent with pretty much every shooter we've had in this country, from schools to what happened to Charlie Kirk and to today. I think that's going to unfortunately continue, as the people that Senator Cruz is calling out, generally as politicians, many times we could name those names. I don't think they're going to actually stop. They'll blame this shooting actually on ICE and on enforcing the law, rather than on the shooters and their own rhetoric and their own actions encouraging this kind of behavior. And I find that extremely unfortunate. I have friends in CBP and in Homeland Security and throughout government. And at this point, you almost have to treat them as members of the military because of the level of risk that they're taking, just simply doing their job.
I mean, I'm just trying to understand this. ICE agents, they're just trying to do their job, right? I mean, under the direction of authorities, whether it's the president or any other authority figure. I mean, they're just doing their job. Why target ICE agents?
Well, first of all, it's easy for them to target the people that they think are the predominant so-called enemy in this case, who are deported, to go through the process of deporting all these illegal alien invaders that have come into the United States. And so that for them is clearly the first thing that they're going to do, and it's unfortunate that they're doing that. My greater concern, of course, grows beyond that, because they're going to continue with this kind of violence. I think ultimately what they're seeking is an actual violent response from those of us who would oppose them, so they could try to maybe increase government security measures and start labeling those of us who just want to live in peace as violent as well, which is why I tell everybody I talk to is don't engage in the violence, call it out, stand against it, and be people of peace, regardless of what's going on around us.
Okay, just one final question, Colonel Gobb. There's been a push demanding agents remove their mask and identify themselves during immigration raids. For example, this month, California signed into the law No Secret Police Act through the federal government. So, I mean, could what happened here strengthen the argument that agents need to protect their identity for their own safety?
It can, and it probably should in the end. Ultimately, it's not these agents' fault that they're getting doxxed and their families are getting threatened, and that they have to take such measures to ensure that their families aren't attacked. They're under enough risk already without having to live at home, even greater risk, wondering if they're going to get attacked where they live or their families while they're gone doing their job. This should ensure that those agents continue to do what is necessary to protect themselves. It's a political game in California. They know it's not enforceable because this falls under the federal government's auspices and not the state law enforcement. So I think the message is pretty clear that Gavin Newsom in this particular case doesn't care about ICE agents, and that is obviously unfortunate.
Okay, Colonel Gobb, thank you so much for your time today. It was great speaking with you.
Thanks, Don.
Credibility of the United Nations in question now, as countries who are accused of torture, persecution, or even forced organ harvesting hold voting power within the organization. We discuss this issue with an award-winning journalist after the break.
Kids love it. Parents trust it.
Obviously.
Explore GJW Plus Kids series and Ganjiong campus courses led by expert educators.
This is spectacular.
Children will learn values like respect, responsibility, and knowledge in language, science, and more.
Wow.
All while having fun.
Perfect.
Subscribe today at GJW Plus Kids, where learning meets fun.
I trod on my glasses yesterday, and I had to pay up front for a new pair that I can't even pick up for another 10 days. So I looked for another way, and I found Select Specs. I ordered online. My new glasses just arrived this morning, and I can pay over the next few weeks. This is the way to buy glasses.
See now, pay later with Select Specs. Next day delivery and deferred payment options only at selectspecs.com.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
Whispered across generations, a hidden secret unveils the essence of longevity and vitality, a timeless legend regarding energy and wonder. Rooted in ancient health wisdom, we proudly introduce Pure Tang Black Ginseng, a 100% natural organic energy drink made from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng. It takes 2,260 days and nights from seed to growth, undergoing a meticulous 9-step process of steaming and drying. Black ginseng reaches its full potency, enriched with ginsenoside RG3 and enhanced absorption efficiency. No sugar, no caffeine, no artificial ingredients. Experience the pure natural power of Puretang Black Ginseng. Nourish your body, strengthen your immunity, and boost your energy. To order Puretang Black Ginseng, please visit puretang.com.
Big things are happening at Mathis Home. Come in now for 65th anniversary savings all over the store. Like this oversized sofa in an ultra soft fabric with thick premium gel cushions and 5 throw pillows. Anniversary priced at just $9.99. That's an incredible value. Just one of over 100 great sofas in stock and ready for you to enjoy tonight with fast and easy financing and free delivery. Don't miss out on 65th anniversary savings happening now at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
The Secret Service is probing the United Nations escalator that malfunctioned for President Trump. The White House says this could have been a deliberate act. The President and the First Lady visited the UN headquarters in New York City yesterday to address the General Assembly, and the escalator stopped abruptly as they stepped onto it. They had to walk up the escalator themselves. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt shared an article from The Times this past Sunday. It reported that some UN staffers have joked that they may turn off the escalator to mark Trump's arrival and tell him they ran out of money so that he has to walk up the stairs. Leavitt said on X, quote, "If someone at the UN intentionally stopped the escalator as the President and First Lady were stepping on, they need to be fired and investigated immediately." During yesterday's speech, Trump's teleprompter also failed to work. The President mentioned both tech glitches in his speech. Concerns are growing over possible Chinese influence behind the scenes at the United Nations. The UN has once again denied press credentials to multiple reporters from 2 US-based media outlets. Yours truly, NTD, which you're watching now, and our sister media, the Epoch Times. The Epoch Times senior White House correspondent Amala Khan traveled to New York City on Sunday to cover the UN General Assembly with the State Department press pool. A State Department official informed her that the UN had rejected her application, claiming the Epoch Times is a non-governmental organization, not a news outlet. The Epoch Times is the 4th largest newspaper in the United States. Its editor-in-chief accused the UN of caving to censorship pressure from the Chinese Communist Party on American soil. NTD reporters faced similar issues. The Epoch Times was founded in 2000 by Chinese Americans. It was created as a response to censorship and human rights abuses in China. Today, it publishes in 22 languages across 33 countries. The outlet's early staff in China were arrested and tortured, with some sentenced to more than a decade in prison. In 2022, whistleblowers revealed that Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping personally directed state security to intensify efforts against the Epoch Times and NTD. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says the world is living through the most destructive arms race in human history. Here's Zelenskyy addressing the United Nations in New York earlier today.
We are now living through the most destructive arms race in human history, because this time includes artificial intelligence.
Zelenskyy is calling for continued support from Western allies. The Ukrainian president also said that Russia seeks to continue the war by expanding it beyond Ukraine. This comes after 3 NATO members recently reported airspace violations by Moscow. Poland and Romania say Russian drones penetrated their borders, and Estonia reported that 3 fighter jets entered its territory. Russia denies the allegations. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy addressed the United Nations. He highlighted Russia's occupation of the Crimean Peninsula, which has been going on now for years.
Do not let war become part of the norm. Russia very much wants to make war the new normal, and this is exactly what we must resist.
Zelenskyy calls for global rules to curb the use of artificial intelligence in weapons. He also describes groundbreaking innovation in the military use of drones. And Zelenskyy accuses Russian President Vladimir Putin of seeking to expand his war beyond Ukraine. This comes after 3 NATO members recently reported airspace violations by Moscow. And joining us now to discuss President Trump's remarks at the United Nations General Assembly and the Chinese Communist Party's influence in the United Nations is Alex Newman, award-winning international journalist educator and author as well. Good afternoon to you, Alex. So President Trump said yesterday at the UN that it has a lot of potential, but hasn't lived up to that potential. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Well, if you go back to the early history of the United Nations, one of the key agendas by the people who created it, including multiple agents for Joseph Stalin, including an American who was later arrested and thrown in prison, Alger Hiss, served as the chairman of the conference that wrote the UN Charter and later the first Secretary General. Their agenda was always to create a one world system that is political and economic in nature. And so from that perspective, I think the potential of the UN is really rather dangerous. Now, one of the things that Trump did during his speech was systematically dismantle the UN's own raison d'etre, right? On paper, at least, the United Nations exists to promote peace and stop war. And as the president pointed out, I think very correctly, it has not done that. In fact, the president himself said he has ended 7 wars within his first year in office in the second term. The United Nations was not involved in any of those. So I think the president was making nice comments to try to be friendly with the Secretary General and the senior leadership there. But he understands, as well as I think many Americans do, that we have a real problem when it comes to this organization. It is not interested in peace. It has a much more sinister agenda.
Yeah, you're absolutely right on that. And what do you think about Trump saying that the UN is actually supporting uncontrolled migration? He said that too as well.
He is 100% correct. In fact, the Epoch Times did a documentary that I helped Josh Phillip with. It was a very, very good documentary. I encourage those who haven't watched it to go check it out. This is a critical issue. And the way Trump phrased this, I think, really deserves to be heard. He called this a globalist assault on the West, and in particular on the borders of the Western world. And he pointed out that this was not just a bad policy idea. This was just not just misguided idealism. This was part of a deliberate agenda to undermine the Western world. And as he said repeatedly throughout his remarks, a lot of this is actually for the direct benefit of the Chinese Communist Party, whether we're talking about the green energy scam, as he referred to it, whether we're talking about the mass immigration. The primary beneficiary of this whole fiasco is the CCP. The UN knows that. The senior leadership of the UN knows that. The CCP knows that. And Trump knows that. Unfortunately, many Western leaders don't seem to understand that yet. But you saw a lot of clapping after his remarks. I think awareness is growing.
You mentioned the Chinese Communist Party. And you know what's crazy to me? As you know, China and Cuba sit on the UN Human Rights Council, right? How does the council have credibility when those countries who are accused of torture, persecution, or even forced organ harvesting hold voting power?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And this is something that I have been pointing out for well over a decade in my reporting in the New American Magazine and also in the Epoch Times. I did a piece a few years ago in the opinion pages of the Epoch Times pointing out that the CCP and a lot of these autocratic regimes have a very different understanding of human rights than Americans do. In the United States, our Declaration of Independence says God gives us rights and government exists to protect those rights: life, liberty, property, pursuit of happiness. The UN's understanding of rights can be understood just from reading its documents, like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Article 29 says none of these rights and privileges can ever be used contrary to the purposes and principles of the UN. It's a radical redefinition of rights. And so that's why the CCP, that's why mass murdering dictatorships can sit on this Human Rights Council and pretend to be all in favor of human rights, while simultaneously criticizing a country like the United States, Western countries, for clinging to real rights. It's very perverse, but I would urge people to consider the fact that this is very deliberate. This is an effort to reframe rights, not as something that is unalienable, something that precedes and supersedes government, but rather as a privilege that the government in its kindness gives you and that the government in its wisdom can take away at any time.
And Alex, can you talk to us as well about what specific or diplomatic tools or economic tools does Beijing use to influence the UN?
Well, it's been doing this for a very long time. They have a school of global governance in Beijing where they're training up thousands of operatives to infiltrate the United Nations. And we've seen this very openly, right? Normally, when someone goes to work for the UN, they take an oath to the international organization and promise to renounce their political parties at home and even the interests of their own nation. The CCP has been very clear that any member of the CCP who goes to work in the UN must obey the CCP. When Meng Hongwei was arrested, he was the head of Interpol back when he visited China again. He was supposed to have diplomatic immunity. One of the things that the CCP said about him was that he wasn't obeying the dictates of the Chinese Communist Party. Why we would have a CCP card-carrying member running the global law enforcement agency, or at least the wannabe global law enforcement agency, is something that I think people really ought to be asking themselves. but CCP operatives, including card-carrying members of this terrorist criminal organization, are at the highest levels of the UN across its 15 specialized agencies, and they now dominate huge swaths of policymaking in this global institution.
And Alex, you wrote about this as well. So I wanted to ask you something specific about the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. How has the CCP embedded itself within UNESCO's leadership and key initiatives, for example, like Education 2030?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is a problem that goes all the way back to the founding of UNESCO. You have had communists from China and from other countries in the leadership going back to the very beginning. Now, if you look more recently, at this moment, one of the top deputies of UNESCO is a card-carrying member of the CCP. The leader is a publicly declared socialist, and the previous leader was a publicly declared communist, Irina Bokova. She was a member of the Bulgarian Communist Party. She actually served in a senior role as this regime was slaughtering hundreds of thousands of innocent people, and they almost promoted her to UN Secretary General. So what the UNESCO is doing is it's putting communist Chinese propaganda and communist propaganda generally in the education systems of countries around the world. And the danger of that cannot be emphasized strongly enough. We're talking about the next generation of leaders, political, business, and otherwise, and they're being indoctrinated as we speak with this kind of propaganda. Thankfully, Donald Trump has announced that we're leaving from this, but the head of UNESCO publicly responded and said, well, we're going to keep working with our American partners anyway. So it's a big threat.
So, Alex, I told our reporters earlier about this. The United Nations, again, denied press credentials to several reporters from 2 U.S. media companies, the Epoch Times and us, NTD, right? How can it justify barring these companies from covering its meetings? I mean, we're simply exercising our fundamental rights to a free press.
This shows you the influence of the CCP. There is no doubt in my mind that this was an instruction from the Chinese Communist Party. Now, I do go to many of these UN meetings. I was at the UN General Assembly, the Summit of the Future last year. I go to the UN Climate Summits every year. I'll be at the one in Brazil in just a couple months. And I do occasionally submit articles to the Epoch Times from these meetings. But what we see is when a government is powerful enough, they can dictate policy at the UN. We saw the Canadian government get rebel media banned from there because they asked tough questions about climate change. So this shows you the corruption that exists within the UN, where it's taking its orders from a murderous regime, from a murderous political party. And it shows, I think it should show Americans very clearly that this is not an institution that's aligned with our values. It's not an institution that's aligned with the values that our country was founded on. That makes it extremely dangerous.
So the Epoch Times editor-in-chief said, quote, "The Epoch Times is America's 4th largest newspaper. It is unacceptable that the United Nations caves to the Chinese Communist Party's censorship efforts on American soil." Can you talk a bit more on this?
Yeah, it's an absolute abomination. I, of course, will be raising these concerns with my contacts within the Trump administration. But I think if we don't push back here and now, we're going to see much more of this. They have tried to deny me press credentials in the past. This is very deliberate. They don't like real questions being asked there. And so we need to understand that this is a symptom of a much broader disease. It's not just that they won't allow a particular set of reporters in. This goes to the heart of what the United Nations is. It's a tool, unfortunately, in many cases, for totalitarians, for people who are completely opposed to everything that our country stands for. And I do hope that the Trump administration will push back very forcefully on this. The U.S. taxpayer remains the single largest source of funds for this entire organization and its affiliates. And so the Trump administration needs to use what U.S. influence there is still to push back on this immediately.
Okay, Alex, it was so great to hear your comments today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Oklahoma has struck a deal to get Turning Point USA chapters in high schools across the state. Plus, the organization founded by Charlie Kirk resumes its tour of college campuses. Stay tuned.
During high school, I hung with the wrong crowd and I never graduated.
I helped Santiago in many different ways, like all fathers do, because he always wanted to go to college.
I felt a little embarrassed to come back to school, but eventually, once I came here, I knew that it's for a bigger goal.
He was very dedicated, hardworking. He connected with his teachers. He connected with other students. That was one of the key reasons why he was able to keep forging ahead.
It was amazing to see him graduate. This was one thing that meant so much to him, and of course, it meant so much to us too.
With the help of my father and having my son, that was all the motivation that I needed. That support is everything.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
I was a quarterback at Hardaway High School. College first-round draft pick, on and off the field. We were taught to not show any signs of weakness. During the football season, I would stop eating. But I didn't know I was depressed. I thought that something was wrong with me. For 20 plus years was physical. We didn't have any education behind what mental health was. I started to learn it starts here first. If this is together, I'll be better as a father, as a man, and as a husband. Put the importance on your mental health. I'm not scared to talk about it anymore. The first tool is therapy. The second one is positive self-talk. And then journaling, putting your thoughts on paper. We have to redefine what being a strong man is and heal, love your mind.
Vice President J.D. Vance is in North Carolina right now taking questions. Let's take a look.
So gruesome, and maybe I should just stare at it. Maybe all of us should stare at it to know the kind of evil that we're actually confronting, because what happened to her was really, really disgusting, and I think it comes from a deep and dark and evil place that exists. Thankfully, in a very few number of people, but those people we ought to lock up in prison so they can't get anybody else. But when I saw that video, you know what really got me as a father? I've got 3 little kids, 2 boys, and my youngest is a baby girl. She's 3 years old. She is the apple of my eye, as you dads will know. Daughters just have an effect on us. They get away with more stuff. They don't they? It's kind of annoying, actually. She gets away with things she should not get away with that her brothers would never get away with. But I look at this girl who's 22 years old, and I think to myself, you know, I would love for my daughter to have the kind of life where she never has to worry about that. And there's this moment where she looks up at her attacker and she covers her mouth, and you realize what's going through her head. She knows that something very terrible has happened to her, and I hope that she didn't realize it for too long, because that is unimaginable suffering. But if you're a man, I don't care what skin color you are, I don't care whether you're rich or poor, but if you're a man and you see the pleading eyes of a girl looking up for protection, then we have to protect our girls and our women in this country. And that was my reaction to it. That was my thought when I watched it. Now, young man, this is a very earnest young man. He doesn't look like a journalist to me, but go ahead and shout out a question, because I'm not going to deny that level of energy and that level of passion. First of all, what's your name?
Henry.
Henry. It's good to meet you, Henry. Ask your question, please.
I skipped school today. I was wondering if I could get a picture with you.
Henry said, I skipped school. Can I have a picture with you? Well, I guess you got to have some excuse to skip school, so I might as well get a photo with Henry. Now the next reporter is going to be, hey, I'm from CNN. Can I get a photo with you too? I wish that I got questions that easy. I'm not holding out hope. Sir. Can we get you a microphone? I can't hear you, sir.
Gotcha. I'm Jordan Green with Raw Story. President Trump and other speakers here have blamed former Governor Cooper and the mayor of Charlotte for Irina Zarutska's death. Do you also hold the North Carolina General Assembly responsible, who set the laws governing pretrial release that may have affected this crime?
Well, look, I think every politician who didn't work hard to keep violent criminals behind bars deserves to have some of the blame. But at the very top of that list is Governor Cooper, because at the time that we were pushing these soft-on-crime policies, Governor Cooper was the man in charge. Now, I know we've got some great North Carolina legislators, and I might call them out if they're here. Do we have a North Carolina House Speaker, Destin Hall? Where's Destin at? Destin, thank you, man. We got Phil Berger here. Phil, thank you so much. Senate President Pro Tem. We've got County Sheriff Van Shaw. Where's County Sheriff Van Shaw? Thank you, sir. We've got Cabarrus County DA Ashley Shanley. Is it Shanley? I got that right? Okay. Of course, we got North Carolina GOP Chairman Jason Simmons. Jason Simmons is, that's a celebrity in the Trump White House there. North Carolina Labor Commissioner Luke Farley. Luke, where are you? Luke, thank you. And I know, look, I know that our great North Carolina local legislators here have worked very hard to solve some of these soft-on-crime policies and make it harder to let violent criminals out so easily, and to demand that when you have a violent criminal who goes in, the person stays there and doesn't get a slap on the wrist and released to commit more crime in the community. That's what we want. We don't want a criminal justice system that goes after innocent people. We also don't want a criminal justice system that lets obviously violent felons out of prison without any real consequences. It's just very simple. And again, I go back to the statistic where we have got such a small number of people who commit so much of the violent crime. If we just locked them up, and I mean, look, I believe in repentance and I believe in forgiveness, but I believe that forgiveness often only comes on the other side of real punishment and real regret some of these guys up in the first place. So yeah, I blame the political leadership, and I can't get over a governor who pursued soft-on-crime policies, Roy Cooper, who pursued soft-on-crime policies, who let violent criminals out of prison, and then after Irina was murdered, to have the audacity to blame our law enforcement. Law enforcement arrested this guy 14 times. They did their job. It's time for the politicians to do their job, too. Next question.
Vice President Vance, thank you so much for taking questions. I'm Casey Jones from WCCB Charlotte. When it comes to cracking down on crime in cities like DC, Memphis, Chicago, sending the National Guard, what specific metrics does the administration use to decide where those resources go? And can we expect that kind of response here in Charlotte anytime soon?
Well, look, if the mayor of Charlotte and the governor of North Carolina asked for our help, we would absolutely send it, because we believe in helping people regardless of whether they're Democrats or Republicans. We would love to have the mayor of Charlotte reach out for our help. And that's, you asked what the metrics are. That's one of the most important metrics. We want to go where we can have a real partnership between local law enforcement and the federal officials so that we can root out the crime. And that goes to the second metric. What is the most important thing? You can tell how many people are being murdered in a community. You can tell how many carjackings there are. You can tell how many armed robberies there are. There's way too much violent crime happening in our country. And when we look at an American community, again, we don't care about their politics. When we look at an American community where people are suffering because of violent crime, our response is, we want to help, just let us. And I'd encourage everybody to talk to your local officials. I know we're a little far away from Charlotte, but to talk to your local officials and encourage them to ask for the help of the Trump administration. We are willing to provide it. We want fewer people to be affected by violent crime, but these guys have actually got to play a partnership role with us. And unfortunately, way too many of them. Some of these people, it's crazy. They are ruling over cities that have violent crime rates that are worse than Mogadishu. And they say, no, 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 we don't want Donald Trump to come in. Well, excuse me, if you don't need the federal help, then why is your murder rate so terrible in the first place? You do need the help. You just need to admit it. Thank you, Casey. Next question.
Vice President, Michael Warwick, I'm with WBTV. Welcome to Race and Country, first of all. Irina's law was just passed by Republican lawmakers. It's now on Governor Stein's desk. It addresses cashless bail. It would allow magistrates to involuntarily commit people who they believe to be sick. However, opponents of that bill don't think it goes far enough for the mental health side of things. It also opens the door to the death penalty, which I know some opponents are against. Why would you encourage the governor, politics aside, to sign that bill?
Well, because I want to keep violent criminals off the street, and I want Americans to be safer. And this bill does it. Irina's law does it. Congratulations to the Senate President and House Speaker for getting it over the finish line. The governor's got to sign it. I guarantee if this bill is signed into law, it will help our incredible law enforcement keep the streets safe. And that's ultimately all I really care about. Again, it breaks my heart to think that you have young kids, you know, especially in poor communities, whether they're black or white, who don't feel like they can walk outside. You've got grandmothers who are taking care of grandkids who don't want to sit out on their front porch because they're worried about drive-by shootings. That should break everybody's heart, and the way to solve the problem is to empower these cops to go after the bad guys and to do it with their full skill and their full force. Now, I don't know, have I read every detail of the law? I know some of the things that it does. I know that it ends cashless bail, which would be huge for the people in North Carolina. I know it makes it harder for some of these local magistrates to let people out with a slap on the wrist. That would be huge for the people of North Carolina. But could there be more? There could always be more. But don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. This bill is going to make North Carolinians safer. They ought to sign it.
Hi, Mr. Vice President. It's Kit Maher representing the White House TV pool today. I just have two national questions for you, if you'll allow it.
Go ahead.
Number one, on Ukraine, President Trump said that Ukraine can fight and win back its territory. Could you explain the shifting stance there from stopping the bloodshed immediately, ending the war, and now saying that Ukraine should fight? Is that a tactic to pressure Putin back to the table?
We'll go ahead and do the second question.
Yeah, second question. Yeah. Last year, when I was covering you on the campaign trail, you told Joe Rogan that the difference between Harris and Trump is that Trump is not trying to censor his fellow Americans. I'm wondering if you can square your fervent belief in free speech with what's going on now with Jimmy Kimmel and the FCC pressure. I'd love to hear your thoughts on both of those.
Well, look, on the free speech conversation, I'm pretty sure that Jimmy Kimmel was back on the air last night, and to the extent that he's not back on the air, it's because he's not funny and has terrible ratings. This is not a federal government problem. This is... And Kit, I want to answer your question in good faith. What people will say is, well, you know, didn't the FCC commissioner put a tweet out that said something bad? Well, Kit, compare that, the FCC commissioner making a joke on social media. What is the government action that the Trump administration has engaged in to kick Jimmy Kimmel or anybody else off the air? Zero. What government pressure have we brought to bear to tell people that they're not allowed to speak their mind? Zero. We believe in free speech in the Trump administration. We are fighting every single day to protect it. Now compare that to the Biden administration, where we found out just yesterday that conservatives on YouTube and on a number of social media platforms were being censored. Why? Because the Biden administration picked up the phone and said, we want you to censor our political opponents. That is real government censorship, and it left the White House when Joe Biden left the White House. Now to Ukraine. Look, I've answered a version of this question probably 100 times over the past 3 months. And one of the things I'll say about the president is that he is responsive to the reality on the ground. And the reality on the ground is that, number one, we have engaged in incredibly good faith negotiations with both the Russians and the Ukrainians. And I believe the president is growing incredibly impatient with the Russians right now because he doesn't feel like they're putting enough on the table to end the war. That's number one. Number two, The president has grown very confident that this war is bad for Russia. You hear me say this all the time. You hear the president say this all the time. The war is bad for Russia. It's bad for Ukraine. It's bad for America. We want the killing to stop. That remains the president's position. But the president also can look at reality on the ground. He sees the economic numbers that are coming out of Eastern Europe. He sees the number of dead people, both Russians and Ukrainians, that are happening in that war. And the president is telling Vladimir Putin it is time to stop the killing. He would say that to Zelenskyy. In fact, has said that to Zelenskyy. He wants this war to end, and he's doing everything that he can to stop it. But look, if the Russians refuse to negotiate in good faith, I think it's going to be very, very bad for their country. That's what the president made clear. It's not a shift in position. It's an acknowledgement of the reality on the ground. We're going to keep on fighting for peace every single day in the Trump administration. And I'll do one more question here. Another question.
I don't want to take it from you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice President. Monica Casey, WRAL out of Raleigh. We are coming up on the one-year anniversary of Hurricane Helene's devastation.
Sure.
What is the administration doing to speed up the distribution of federal aid for that disaster?
Yeah, so just in the last week, the Secretary of Homeland Security put another, I believe, $64 million into the disaster relief effort. We inherited, I'm going to be honest with you, a FEMA that was mired in bureaucracy and red tape. The president has made very clear from day one, we want to get relief to the people of North Carolina as quickly and as rapidly as humanly possible, and that's what we're trying to do. The second thing I'll say is that I understand the governor had a very good call with the president, I believe on 9/11 actually, about a week and a half ago. It may have been, the day before or the day afterwards. But he had a good conversation with the president about some of the disaster relief needs that are there. We're going to keep on working on this. We're going to keep on working with some of our colleagues and the federal congressional delegation from North Carolina. But let me just say, I visited the devastation myself. I want the people there to know we continue to think about them. We continue to work on this issue. And we're going to make sure that we never forget that area of North Carolina and the devastation that storm caused. Great. All right. On that note, I just want to say you guys have been an incredible group to get to spend some time with. Henry, I hope you got the photo you needed. So are you going to get like a tardy, Henry, or what's the deal? If you get a photo with the vice president, you're allowed to have an excused absence? Is that how that works? Okay, he doesn't know, actually. Henry is not as confident in that question as I would have hoped, but it's great to meet you, my friend. It's great to be with all of you. Just remember, we've got a very, very important job, and each and every single one of us has a role to play. To our law enforcement, thank you for the job that you do. We're going to keep on fighting for you in the Trump administration. We're going to keep on fighting for safety and security all across the state of North Carolina. God bless you. Thank you for having me.
And that was Vice President J.D. Vance speaking in North Carolina, taking reporter questions, covering a range of topics, including the Russia-Ukraine war and the killing of Ukrainian refugee Irina Zarutska. So on Russia and Ukraine, Vice President J.D. Vance is saying that President Trump is taking a look at the reality of the situation and potentially reacting to that. And on Ukrainian refugee Zarutska, Vice President J.D. Vance said that legislators who were soft on crime has a part of the blame in her death. And also Vice President J.D. Vance taking a photo with a child who actually skipped school. All right, we're going to take a short break now. Coming up, a new investigation revealing the CCP's secret healthcare initiative targeting infants for mass organ harvesting. Forced insemination, illegal arrests, all alleged to create donors for China's top leaders. We'll break down the shocking details when we come back.
The bladder control aisle. You won't shop here again. Your private business is your own. The constant struggle is over. Now there's a better way. It's HDIS. We home deliver bladder control products. We understand how you feel. For over 25 years, we've home delivered to many of the 20 million Americans who deal with incontinence. We offer all brands. We pay shipping and use plain, unmarked boxes. If we can help you or someone you care for, call for your free product sample pack and $45 in money-saving coupons. Our counselors will help you choose the right product. And unlike stores, we're always in stock. You'll get what you need. Satisfaction guaranteed. HDIS. The better way.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog, $45 in money-saving coupons, and free product samples, call 1-800-701-6159. That's 1-800-701-6159.
You are not hidden. There's never been a moment you were forgotten. You are not hopeless. Though you have been broken, your innocence stolen. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true, I will rescue you.
On streets across America, young people are homeless, abused, in danger. Covenant House is helping young people with nowhere else to turn. But the need is overwhelming. Please call or go online now with your gift of $19 a month. You'll help provide hot meals, safe shelter, medical care, and love to more than 2,000 young people who sleep at a Covenant House every night. Homeless young people are afraid and alone. Your monthly donation right now will show them they are loved and safe.
I have no words to express how Covenant House changed my life.
Call or go online now and give just $19 a month. We'll send you this comforting blanket as a reminder of the difference you're making in a young person's life. Call or go online now to safeplacetosleep.org.
President Trump will meet Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese next month. The October 20th White House sit-down will be the first summit between the security allies since Trump's second election. The two leaders have much to discuss. One issue is the multi-billion-dollar AUKUS project to provide Australia with nuclear-powered attack submarines to counter China's ambitions in the Indo-Pacific. The project is currently under Pentagon review. Albanese yesterday posted a selfie to Instagram of the two leaders together at a reception in New York. He said he expects the October meeting to be constructive. Albanese is attending the United Nations General Assembly for the first time. Australia recognized Palestinian statehood on Sunday. Albanese is scheduled to promote Australia's ban on social media for children today. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the U.S. is in negotiations for a $20 billion swap with Argentina's central bank. That's to buy Argentina's U.S. dollar-denominated bonds. Bessent says the U.S. is ready to purchase secondary or primary government debt. The administration is also working with the Argentine government to end the tax holiday for commodity producers converting foreign exchange. Argentina's government bond prices rose sharply today. Stocks edged higher after Bessent provided details on his previous pledge to support Latin America's third largest economy and its president, Javier Milei. The U.S. expects to finalize trade deals with more Southeast Asian countries in the coming months. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer made the comments in Kuala Lumpur. He was at a meeting with economic ministers from the 10-member Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN. Here he is.
We believe that there are many areas where our interests align, and we can work together to achieve shared goals of bringing reciprocity and balance to the global trading system. We also recognize ASEAN's affirmative statement in April to approach the U.S. initiative from a framework of understanding and discussion, and that has been borne out over the past few months.
Greer says ASEAN is an important and consequential partner for the United States. He said the combined population of member nations is more than 1 billion people. Trade in goods and services among the bloc is around $500 billion. Today marked Greer's first meeting with the bloc. Member nations have largely engaged in separate negotiations with the United States on the issue of tariffs. Iran will continue to sell oil to China even if the United Nations imposes sanctions. This is what the Islamic regime's oil minister said earlier today. The Iranian minister said that impending sanctions from the UN would not create any new burdensome restrictions on its oil sales. He said they may not add much to the existing sanctions and that Iran will carry out necessary planning based on the circumstances. France, Britain, and Germany are trying to reach a deal with Iran after accusing it of violating the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Sanctions will be triggered under a so-called snapback mechanism on September 27th if no deal is struck. In 2024, China accounted for nearly 4/5 of Iranian oil exports. A shocking new report claims the Chinese Communist Party is now running a secret full-scale program of infant organ harvesting, moving beyond the experimental phase. The report comes from a U.S.-based NGO called the International Organization to Investigate the Persecution of Falun Gong. Founded in 2003, the group says its mission is to investigate the CCP's persecution of Falun Gong practitioners, gather evidence, reveal what's happening in China, and hold those responsible accountable. Here's more.
The group's new report says the CCP has created a secret system to industrialize infant organ transplants. It claims this system involves illegally kidnapping women and taking sperm from people who may need organ transplants in the future. That sperm is reportedly used to artificially inseminate the captured women. In other words, babies may be created to match future organ recipients. Here's a closer look at who the report says might be potential organ recipients. The report links this system to the CCP's secret healthcare program for China's top leaders called Project 981. Launched in 2005, the program is reportedly designed to extend the lives of China's elite, with a goal of helping them live up to 150 years. According to the report, China's 3 largest infant organ supply bases are located in the provinces of Shandong, Henan, and Sichuan. Some surrogacy and prostitution rings are reportedly involved, forming a vast network of illicit profits.
British police arrest a man following a cyber attack that caused widespread travel chaos throughout European airports. This is the latest in a string of online hacks with significant offline consequences. We have that story and more after this break.
I had a pretty normal mom life. Everything was pretty good, and it was a very happy life.
And we just had a new baby. And then all of a sudden, within a day or two, she's on life support and fighting for her life.
And I knew something was pretty wrong. A little less than a week after I came home, I couldn't breathe. That's when we decided to go to the hospital. I was given the diagnosis that I had peripartum cardiomyopathy, which is basically a pregnancy-induced heart failure. They told me my only chance was a heart transplant.
And the American Heart Association helped make that possible. Their research helped save me.
This could not happen without monthly donations from friends like you. Your sustained support helps fund life-saving research that leads to medical breakthroughs, like those that gave Jen a second chance at life. Heart disease is the #1 killer in America, and we urgently need your help to save lives. Go to helpheart.org or call now to become a monthly donor today. Your donation of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, will make a difference through prevention, early detection, treatments, and cures that help save lives.
I am very thankful for the American Heart Association. I'm grateful for just every day that I get with my children.
Please go to helpheart.org or call now with your donation of just $19 a month. Join our community of monthly donors, and you'll get this limited edition t-shirt you could wear to show you're helping save lives.
One simple act today can save your life or the life of a loved one.
So please, call or go to helpheart.org now to help save lives.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our biggest 3-in-1 sale ever with a limited edition product, a back in stock special, and a closeout deal you won't find anywhere else. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get our MyPillow bed sheets only $29.88. Any color, any style, any size, even kings, regular $119.98 only $29.88. Once they're gone for good. How about our My Towels? They're finally back in stock, but not for long. Get a